Welcome back to My Trauma's Chronic, but I'm iconic. In today's episode, we're diving into a conversation that's both inspiring and enlightening as we chat with incredible Giulia Sale, a podcast host, public speaker, and advocate who's here to share her personal journey with visual snow syndrome, VSS. If you ever wonder what it's like to live with a neurological condition that affects your vision, mental health, and daily life, this episode is for you. Giulia's story is one of resilience, self-advocacy, and the power of community, and she's here to show us that even in the midst of adversity, there's always room for hope, strength, and purpose. Giulia has not only learned to navigate her life with VSS, but she's also turned her experiences into a platform for raising awareness and making an impact. Today we'll hear about the highs, the lows, and everything in between, as she discusses what it means to live with a condition that's often unseen, yet has a profound effect on our day-to-day life. Before we dive in, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe so we can continue doing the work that we're doing and making an impact on the world. Your support helps us reach more people and keep these important conversations going. So, grab a cup of tea, get cozy, let's get started. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, of course. My name is Giulia. I am originally from Italy, been in the UK for 6 years, which does sound like very long, but I'm enjoying myself. At the moment, I am on a mission to bridge the confidence gap in the workplace by helping mission-driven founders and their teams build confidence and overcome imposter syndrome. And I work with mission-driven companies just because I'm a mission-driven person and I want to make sure they don't miss out on any opportunities. My background is also in health and wellness. I've been a mobility coach, yoga teacher. I still teach yoga sometimes. And I've also built a community called 6 Pillars for women and make sure that they get the help that they need in terms of holistic health, basically.
Amazing. The one topic that we're going to talk about today is VSS, visual snow syndrome. And you have become an advocate for that over the last few years. Can you tell us a bit about visual snow syndrome and how you discovered it in the sense of like what life was like before you started experiencing those symptoms? How Kate, what was your journey like?
Well, so about visual snow syndrome, it is the weirdest condition that I've ever heard of. It feels like you're tripping 24/7, literally. So visual snow syndrome, also called VSS, just to make it shorter, it affects about 2 to 3% of the population, and we say this mainly because we don't really know what causes it, and also many people go undiagnosed. So it seems like 2 to 3%, but it could be more. Some people are born with it, some people develop it over time. And what visual snow is basically seeing snow all the time. And this snow can appear in many different ways. It could be statics, which is what I see. It looks like, so if I look at this white wall in front of me, I will literally see tiny black and white dots like flickering. It looks like a TV static from very old TVs. And that is the main symptom. This can also be like next to it would also be palinopsia, for example, which is basically looking at a picture or an object and then looking away, you would see a 3D image of that object. You would get really bad light sensitivity. I think it's called nyctalopia or something like that, where you don't really see well in the dark. You also get regular migraines, and with that comes a lot of anxiety, stress, dissociation, which is what I've struggled with a lot. So yeah, that's what visual snow syndrome is. It is really hard to get diagnosed just because it is either associated with migraine with aura or high blood pressure or other things like brain cancer or strokes, which is what I had to go through, but I guess we can talk about that later on. Yeah, so that's what visual snow is. In terms of how I got in touch with it, before my visual snow, I would say, quite of an happy life. I just didn't realize it. I came from a little bit of a violent family situation, a lot of stress. My parents went through a really violent divorce. And I always felt that anxiety and stress behind me. I just didn't know what it was. I did have many panic attacks when I was in high school, and when I moved to the UK to go to university, I think I was just surrounded by an environment that didn't really allow me to thrive. I was hiding behind friendships where it wasn't really a friendship. I was trying to find myself. Also, I've always been really into movement and exercise, and but as soon as I turned 16 and things started to happen, I just haven't moved my body. I was eating very unhealthy. So I feel like I was just living a life that wasn't really true to myself. And that led me to one night. It was during the pandemic. My friends were like, let's go to a rave. And it was one of those illegal raves. So it was just weird. The vibes were a bit off. Anyway, they give me a pill of ecstasy and I take it all. And I'm not here advocating for not doing drugs, because you do you. Just please study whatever you're taking. Make sure that you know exactly what you're taking, who you're taking with, and you trust people that you're taking with. Because what I've taken obviously wasn't good. It was my first time as well. And I had the biggest panic attack in my entire life. I was in this rave and it was like this very closed room, and I was like literally trying to take my clothes off because it was like really hot and I was hallucinating. And then they took an ambulance and like all this stuff. I'm fine, obviously. I did think that I was literally about to die. And the next few days, every time I would wake up, I couldn't really see well. And I mean, if you do ecstasy, you know that you get this sort of calm down after where you feel really sad, you can't really eat and all this stuff. So I just thought it was just a really bad calm down, but then it started to get stronger and stronger, and like these symptoms started to flash. So I started to see those like statics, and I couldn't leave my house because as soon as I would step outside, my eyes would burn so much because of light sensitivity. Even sunglasses, they couldn't help. And that's when I really started to worry, obviously. And yeah, so that's how I got in touch with it. Right now, looking back, I don't think it was the ecstasy necessarily that caused my visuals. No, it was just that I had such a big panic attack. And I really think, and I sound very holistic when I say this, people might not believe me, but I think it was just a way for my body to tell me, Julia, you really went too far. You've taken drugs because you want to follow other people when you're not being true to yourself. So you gotta chill. And I think I needed visuals note to actually help me to get my life back on track.
It feels like it was such a distressing moment, but it came with a few like warnings, such lessons, being like, Julia, there's so much for you to do. There's so many people that you'll find in your life that will work with not you working with them and stuff like that. How, like, it must be so strange experiencing that, because when I was doing my research for this podcast, there was on Google Images there's like how you see without VSS and how you see with VSS, and it feels like you're in a constant state of fog at times.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I know, like, when I'm describing physical symptoms, sometimes I feel strange. I feel like, maybe it's just me, sort of thing. Like, how did you, like, when you described your symptoms to, like, the doctors or your loved ones or people around you, what was their initial response?
Yeah, it was a really strange process because, first of all, it's something that you can't see. So when you tell people, oh, I can't really see, I see all these things, they don't really understand how much it's actually impacting my life. And also, I've always had this fear of going blind, and it felt like I was going blind because when it just onset, I couldn't see. I remember I was doing my university at the time, and I couldn't read the pages because the words would blend together because the static would get like together, and that's why it took me also longer to graduate. I couldn't go outside, like I couldn't see, and yeah, it was just really weird. Like every time I would look at an object and then go away, everything would move around me. And also I would have these things at night where, well, first of all, I couldn't sleep because of anxiety. And I would wake up and everything would be trembling and my body would be shaking. Really weird. Like I would literally be hallucinating. And then after a while everything would stop trembling and I would have basically another panic attack and then I would be fine again. And also because it feels like the world is not really real. So I had this sense of dissociating so many times. Like I felt everything was so far away from me, and I felt like I was in a dream all the time. I remember I was seeing this person at the time, and sometimes we would be in bed together, and sometimes I would look at them and be like, "Who is this person? Like, do I know them?" Like I would, yeah, I don't. It's really weird to describe. So when it first onset, obviously the first thing that I did was go to an eye doctor because it was an eye problem, I guess. And they said, it's floaters. You're just having a really bad calm down. You got nothing in your eye. You're fine. And then I went home and I felt a bit strange. So I looked up what floaters are, and they're like these bacteria-looking things that you see, and eventually your brain tunes them out because you don't need to see them basically. So it's nothing serious. They just last for a few days. And I was like, this is not what I'm seeing. Like there is much more to it. So I called them back and I said, that's just not what I'm saying. And they're like, are your symptoms getting worse? And I'm like, yeah, they are getting worse, but also that's just not what it was. I need to see the doctor again. The appointment never came, so I went on the 111 NHS website because I needed to see someone. And because of my symptoms and also because of anxiety, I would get numbness in my arms. They immediately thought that I was having strokes. So for 3 months, they would send me to the emergency rooms because they thought I was having like stroke-like symptoms. And every time I would be released because they were like, "Oh, you got nothing. You're fine. It's just migraine with aura, whatever." And then I had to do an MRI to see if I had brain cancer, which obviously didn't help with my anxiety. I was fine, thankfully. And again, they said you might have migraine with aura. So at that point, I looked it up. I know you shouldn't do this, but I looked it up and I Googled, I'm seeing tiny dots on the walls and lights are really bright, blah, blah, blah. And the Visuals No Initiative website came out. The Visuals No Initiative is this charity that basically tries to find support groups, research, whatever it is to help visual no syndrome. And I was looking at all the symptoms and I was like, I have all of this. Like, this is exactly what I'm experiencing. And it also said there is no cure. So might last a long, must like must last for your whole life. And obviously, I started getting really depressed because I was like, oh, there's no cure for this. Like, oh, this is gonna be my life forever. And I made my peace with it. But also, when you read stuff online, even if you're sure that that's what you have, if you're not diagnosed, you get into this loop of what if I'm wrong? What if there's actually something really wrong with me and I'm not curing it? So I still try to go to emergency rooms and doctors, and I found this doctor who is in London who specializes in visual snow, basically on the website. I spent like £300 to talk to this guy for him to tell me, yeah, you have it. Take some supplements. There's nothing that we can do about it. But at least I had the diagnosis. And as much as I don't like labels, being labeled with something really gives you a peace of mind and you can actually start taking action. So that was my story in turn, trying to get diagnosed, trying to understand this. And after that, I just decided to go for more holistic methods. And that really helped me. Yeah.
Wow. It's yeah, like it's I feel like this is something about the healthcare system. It's very, very depressing, and I feel like it's not holistic. It focuses so much on like the biological state, but there's so many other things, and I feel like there's oftentimes people with chronic conditions that just they go to accident emergency, they say, "Oh, it's this or this," or the fact that you took ecstasy one time, and they're going to use that as a reason every single time while you're facing these symptoms. But it's more than that, and they need to see more than the surface level. And it's like you can't tell me like, "Oh, one you took ecstasy one time, and it's so these symptoms are going to last for 3 months." Ecstasy doesn't even stay in your body for that long. Do you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
feel like that's the thing that's wrong with the healthcare system. I feel like once something like you said, I have a few like, diagnoses. The labels are helpful for me to get like support and like help, like treatment, I mean, sorry. But doesn't mean it's gonna be the reason for everything.
Hmm.
And I think that that's a bit of what you've gone through,
Yeah,
and that makes you so. I know for me, it makes me very frustrating. Makes me be like, oh, I sort of rip something apart. Like
totally.
is very much traumatizing as well. You have a bad experience with the healthcare system, and it's just you know,
Yeah, totally. And you get to the point where you have to do your own research and go to a GP and tell them, this is what I found, this is what I have, and still they don't take you seriously because they're like, ah, you consulted Google for your problems? Like, I don't believe that. And especially with
well,
something like visual no syndrome where nobody's heard of it. Nobody has. They just think you're crazy. I know a
yeah,
lot of people in support groups too, that were diagnosed with like psychotic disorders. They were given medications, and that's just absurd because that's
yeah.
not what it is. And you can
It's
do
not gonna
much
stop it,
more
is it?
damage. Yeah.
And it's like it's seen as this massive thing that's going to, like you are the problem, but you're really not the problem. Yeah, it's just so, yeah. And I think that's something that people need to take into account because what's usually the process is, oh, we don't know what the problem is, so you must be crazy. And also, I feel like sometimes you do need to consult Google. If you're not giving me the answers, I need to go to something else. And it's so ridiculous that, we get into a system where we have to pay like £300
Mhm.
just to hear from a professional that knows what you're talking about. If you don't know what you're talking about, just say that and then get me a much more appropriate clinician to go see.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And that this experience really got me into this rabbit hole of understanding the healthcare system and actually understanding how taking care of your body first is so essential for so many other things and for longevity, really. And that's also why I'm so into women's health because I've been through visual no syndrome, but so many women who have, for example, endometriosis or PCOS kind of go through the same things of being undiagnosed and overshadowed when they go to a doctor. And they have to do their own research to do something about it. And they have to rely on social media, which is, sometimes you find that one person that tells the truth, but sometimes you don't, and you don't know who to trust. And then you have that one person who's a clinician who's supposed to help you, but they don't because they're so overworked.
Hmm.
Um, and they rely so much on putting, how can I say, putting plasters on things. I feel like what the problem with Western medicine, especially with situations like this, is that they put plasters on anything. They're like, "Ah, you got anxiety? Take a pill. You're feeling this? Take some supplements. Do this," instead of telling you, "Okay, eat a little bit better." I was talking to a friend of mine who's studying to become a doctor, and I asked him, "How much time do you spend learning nutrition?" And he said, "We have like one module for like probably 2 months in like 6 years." And that's insane. How does a doctor not know about nutrition?
Yeah.
That is so insane. So yeah.
And you need to see a specialist. And I'm like, but there needs to be basic information that doctors do know. And I'm like, I do understand, if the problem is much more complex, but I don't want to go see for something very, very simple to do with nutrition and nutritionist.
Mm,
I feel like all like, I expect my psychiatrist, even though, to know a bit about nutrition. Do you understand? So, how would certain foods interact with the medication, stuff like that. And it's like, and it's not just normal and it's not holistic. It's not, and I'm just like, yeah, I feel like there's so many things wrong with the healthcare system
mm.
and it just needs to change. Like you said, the healthcare system is not made for women at all. And we're like, oh, oh yeah, does it have to do with your menstruation? Sometimes it does. Not gonna lie, but most of the time it doesn't.
Mm.
It's always you're the problem. It's like figure it out. If you don't know the answer, just say it.
Yeah. Yeah. Or at least like direct me to a specialist. Don't just say, I don't know, bye. Like
Well,
tell
once
me
you
this is the person that you
eight
need to see.
times for you to then think about the specialist. After the
Mm,
second time, you need to be like, no, I don't know what I'm doing.
mm.
But it's just that sort of arrogance. of like, or it's an ego thing where like I do not want to,
Yeah,
and I don't want to seem like I don't know what I'm doing. Like, but that makes you just a better clinician, doesn't it? If you can say, actually, I've no idea.
exactly. Yeah.
I have a question. VSS often like when you have to explain to people what it is, how do you explain that to them? It's so complex.
Yeah, so what I say is it is a nervous system imbalance that impacts my eyesight and my vision, and it is something that I do need to take under control. When it just onset for me, I felt like I just had these like weird energies in my head. I don't know how to
Mm,
explain it. And I felt like there was so much power in my head, and I just didn't know how to release all this like anxiety and stress and like fears that I had about the world and about my life. Now, because I can handle it much better and it's gone so much better, like I barely notice it right now. I say it's kind of like my superpower because it does flare up when, for example, I'm about to get my period, or if I'm a little bit more stressed, or if I'm not as healthy. It does flare up, and I can actually see it. So I call it my superpower because if something is wrong, I can literally see it.
mm,
So that's how I see it. Yeah, there is no really better way to explain it to people who don't know. I either like show pictures or yeah, I just try to make them understand how it feels, basically.
mm. What do
Annoying.
you wish that people knew more about VSS?
Hmm. Yeah, I think I wish I knew that it was real. I'm pretty sure many more people have it and they don't really realize. I remember I was working in this startup when it just happened to me, and I posted something about visual snow syndrome on my Instagram, and this girl was literally we would work together all this stuff like the whole time. She messaged me and she said, "Ah, so you posted something about visual snow. Is that what you have?" And I said, "Yes." She's like, "So is this real? Because I think that's what I have as well. Because I've been experiencing all these things." And I said, let's chat about it. And it did seem like that's what she had as well. And I was like, so crazy because we were literally working together all the time. So I do think that more people experience it. I also would like to, for society to understand that if someone says that they have this certain symptoms, it does affect their quality of life. And if you can't see it,
Mm,
because most of the time I would be telling people what I have, and they're like, "Oh, but I have that all the time as well because I have high blood pressure." Yeah, but you don't have it 24/7. Like it
mm,
comes and goes. I get migraine with auras as well, so I get sometimes you just sleep it off, and that's
mm.
fine. I have it 24/7. I have to go through months and months of thinking that I had brain cancer and feeling helpless because I don't know what was going on in my life. I do get shorter attention spans now. I get like light sensitivity still. So if I'm out, I need literally like 2 days off after because I need to like chill with my brain. Um, I get really bad ringing in my ears as well. So my earring sometimes I can't hear my partner if we're in bed because I get this like ringing in my ears and I generally can't understand what he says. Um, yeah, so and also what I would like people to know is that if someone is going through something that you don't necessarily can see or they don't necessarily understand, and if they take boundaries, just to respect those boundaries. Because I had to quit drinking, I had to quit going out all the time, I had to get rid of relationships because I had to take care of myself, and sometimes people just don't really get that more strict lifestyle until something happens to them.
It sounds very like challenging, and I have a lot of invisible disabilities as well, and people it's like I could relate to you when you said I feel like I have it too. It's like when people are like, oh, I have autism. Oh, you have it all. It's people don't understand how debilitating it is. You
Mm.
can't do anything. Like they're like, oh, I'm a bit anxious. I'm a bit this. I'm like, no, you either have it or don't. It's not a bit or not. It's so debilitating. My whole life is centered around my diagnosis because that's how debilitating it is. It's not
Mm.
a choice. I can't do anything. I my disabilities choose what I can and cannot do.
Yeah.
And that is so difficult for people to comprehend.
Mm.
And I'm just like, yeah, you just, yeah, it's so
Yeah,
difficult.
definitely.
And I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes people just need to exercise like basic human decency by saying, Julia, that must be really difficult for you. No, I don't want to hear the other stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh,
Yeah.
I you. Like, no, oh, Julia, that must be really difficult for you. That must, be very challenging. Good enough. You don't need to say more.
Yeah, exactly. Just say, okay, what can I do then? I think, yeah, my partner really nailed it, because sometimes also what has been developing for me after my, like, months after my onset, is that I see really big halos around lights. So street lights are just really big. So sometimes at night I get a little bit overwhelmed because all the lights are like so big for me, and with light sensitivity it doesn't go really hand in hand.
Yeah.
And it's worse and better sometimes. And I remember I was walking with my partner one day, and I was like, the lights look really big right now. Can we go into a pub? And he said, does it mean that you're having a flare up? What can I do? Is there something that is stressing you in your life? Is it the job? Is it the business? What is it? And that's exactly how people should react. Just say, okay, I understand you're not feeling as well. I don't know what you're experiencing, but what can we do? How can I help you?
Mhm. Yeah. That just makes your world just you're like a little bit better, even though you're like it's under so much stress because you're like somebody's there for me, somebody gets it, somebody's there to validate me, and somebody's there to help
Yeah,
me, and it's
yeah.
genuine.
Hmm.
It's like yeah, it's just so yeah, it's something that's you just need. Um, how like you talked about like going outside, like with the street lamps. Um, have you found like certain environments or activities can be a bit more challenging due to your visual symptoms? And how do you adapt? Because there's sometimes where you do need to go out, like for example, if you have to pick up some medication from the pharmacy late at night or something like that, and it's very distressing.
Mm.
How do you adapt?
Yeah. So I have to say the light sensitivity has gotten much better. It's just at night. Sometimes I find it a little bit overwhelming. Um, what I do is just remind myself that I am safe and I am fine, because I did spend months literally stuck in my house, because I knew that as soon as I would step out of the house, I would have a panic attack, because I would get so scared of like saying all these things, or even I would be scared that I would have a flare up and I wouldn't know what to do. Like, you have this fear of what if it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. Um, so if I feel down sometimes, it's just a matter of reminding myself that no matter what I'm going to be seeing or what reality is going to look like for me, I will be fine. Like, I am safe, I am alive. I have been through the worst months and scariest months of my life. So if something happens or there's something unbearable that I can't see, I am gonna be fine. And also understanding, what does your body need? For example, for me, if I know that I'm gonna see bigger lights or if I'm gonna get overwhelmed, what I need is to take a few breaths, maybe look down instead of looking up and looking at all the lights. Um, so having that toolbox in your pocket, something that you can use. So if you get overwhelmed, you know exactly what's going to help you. Or for example, if I'm with someone, I'll literally just grab their arm, and that makes me feel more grounded instead of um, dissociating or whatever that might be. Um, yeah, that's what I do. And if I go raving, I love a nice rave, and I love to have a dance. I just put some glasses on. Hey, like, that's what I do. So yeah, and also understanding your limits. I quit drinking. I go raving fully sober, and I love it. I also, like, before, if someone would be like, "Hey, Julia, let's go out," uh, I would go. Now I don't necessarily do that anymore. I just say, okay, what exactly are we going to be doing? Is it going to be worth me spending my time doing that
Yeah.
thing. So if I go out, I know exactly who's playing, I know exactly who's going to be there, I know exactly when I'm gonna have a great time. And I do have a drink sometimes, but it has to be a margarita. I love a nice margarita. It has to be with people that I love. It needs to be in a safe environment. So setting those boundaries for yourself, because it's gonna be lonely. It's gonna be very restricting. You're gonna feel like an outsider. People are gonna dislike you a little bit more. But ultimately, it's gonna give you a much better quality of life. And remember, and honest, this is a bit unrelated, but your time is your most valuable currency. Who you're spending time with, what you're doing, is so precious. So the more you set those boundaries, the more you actually have a higher quality of life, because you're actually spending time with people and doing things that you enjoy instead of doing things for the sake of doing things. And in the long term, it's just going to affect you a bit more, especially if you have a chronic condition like VSS or really any other. Yeah.
Like, so it seems like it has to influence your social interactions and your relationships. And there must be really some understanding people in your life. But in the early stages, did you encounter any sort of misunderstanding from other people? Because, especially university, you're like, it's going out, go out, go out, go out, go out. And it's like, no,
Mm.
I can't go out or I don't want to go out. And has that influenced your social interactions and relationships, at the early stages?
Yeah, I so when this happened, I remember calling the friend who was with me during the night and telling her I'm experiencing all this, I'm really afraid. And she would just, I mean, she's just the type of person that's very like easygoing, like, whatever. So I don't think she meant to hurt me or anything at all. She just wanted to be a good friend, I think. It just was the wrong approach back then. And she kept telling me, oh, I mean, can you drive? Can you see? Then you're fine. Come on, let's go out. And it was so much more than that. Um, and also that moment, it did change my life, because I had to find, because it's a nervous system imbalance. So you have to find holistic ways to make your life better. And I had to literally fix, let's say, my nervous system from scratch. So you have to start with movement, and you have to start with nutrition, and then your mental health. And eventually you get to your environment, and your relationships are your environment. And I realized that the environment that I was in just didn't allow me to get better. So all my friendships, they would just get me back into a state where I don't vibe with these people that much. I don't know what to do. I don't like going out, drinking, doing drugs. I have so much. I'm a very ambitious person. They had no ambition, and they were really stopping me from doing all the things. So you have to be really strong and say, not just avoid them completely, but start to reduce the amount of time that you spend with those people. Do something else, and it's gonna be so lonely. It's gonna be so lonely, but eventually you're gonna find the people, you're gonna find space for the people and the things that you love. Also, because every time I would tell people that was going on, really one person really helped me. The rest were just not really taking me seriously, or they thought that I was overreacting and all of that. And that really makes you understand of who your close friends are and who needs to go. Um, and that was the most important thing that I've done, is literally getting rid of that environment that I was in. Because eventually, like, you're like a flowers. Let's say you buy a plant or a flowers and you put it in the shadow. Even if you give it so much water, it's not gonna get better. You need to put it in the environment where it thrives. And that's exactly how you are. So you need to have the belief, essentially, that even if you're alone, and even if it's gonna be hard, there's gonna be something so much better out there. And you don't need to stay in the life that you are now forever. Like, there is going to be something out there for you, where you, even if you have a condition, you can have a much better quality of life. Um, so yeah.
No, but it's so true. I feel like it's like a flower, like you said, you can overwater your flower with going out all the time and, listening to people and falling into that peer pressure. Very easy to do. And to be like, no, I'm setting boundaries. This is what I need for myself. That's a massive step. And I feel like even if you're good at setting boundaries, it is because you're going to be like, oh my God, if you're seeing social media and you're like, oh, that person's doing that, I wish. oh,
Mm,
that food looks good. I wish I was there, And you
yeah.
get all these things, and to be able to set those boundaries shows the resilience that you have.
Mhm.
Like, despite all these challenges, you're able to navigate that journey with the VSS in a way that works for you, and that's so important.
Mhm. Yeah, and it builds your confidence in such a magnificent magnificent way. Like now, like I thought I'm the most boring person ever. I like my early mornings. I like to wake up on Sundays and go do some yoga or go for walks. If you ask me to go out, I will come. I will not be drinking. I know exactly when to leave. Like, some people just stay out because they want to stay out all night. If at some point I don't feel the vibes anymore, I'm out. Like, this is just not worth my time. And people judge me for it, but I don't care. Like, I'm living my own boring life and I love it. I'm doing fine. And that's exactly what people like need to understand. Like, it's going to be hard, but eventually you get to that point where you're just happy. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't matter. Um, yeah. So big advocate for changing situations where you're not doing well, whether it's a job or relationship, even if they feel like home or they feel comfortable. Comfortable is not necessarily the place to be. Sometimes you need to get into that uncomfortable feeling to feel much better eventually.
Absolutely. And I think there's such a pressure, especially when you're young, to go out and about. And sometimes we have that pressure on ourselves. And I have that. And I'm no, Royce, we go like I want to go out clubbing. I've never been clubbing. I'm 19, and I'm like, Royce, let's be realistic. If you go out clubbing, do you think you'll be able to manage it? Do you think you will actually enjoy it if you go there? Or do you want to go out there just because everybody else is going out there?
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, I think is I think what other thing that I'm doing much more is I'm actually like, why do I feel the need to go out? No? And stuff like that. And that's really important. You mentioned earlier about your mental health. You were really depressed at the very early stages. Can imagine that VSS still does, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can assume that it significantly impacts your mental health even to this day. Um, what strategies do you use to maintain your mental health while managing these VSS symptoms on a daily basis?
Mhm.
And what role would that um, self-care play in helping you both managing that physical and emotional toll of VSS?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would like to say I did feel depressed, but I was never diagnosed with depression, so I don't want to kind of undermine the term depression because I know it's really hard. I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder and PTSD. From PTSD was before VSS, but um, I remember because like my anxiety was off the charts. I literally couldn't do anything. I wouldn't go to the office. I wouldn't go out. Yeah, it didn't really give me a good quality of life. I would have panic attacks every week, like 3 days a week. Go to the emergency room because of panic attacks. Like it was really getting ridiculous. So what I did first, I got myself a therapist, and I told them, yes, we can look at what is causing anxiety, but what I need right now, urgently, are techniques to manage my anxiety because I need to have a life before I actually look at what is causing my anxiety. So that's what we did. And I discovered a lot of nervous system practices, somatic practices, meditation, mindfulness that really helped. Um, Also, nervous system regulation things that are really weird, really, really weird. Um, and I use that on I started to doing those things on a daily basis. Now it's more for maintenance. I do it if I feel like I'm in a particular stressful period. I do it once a week or once a month. Anyway, whenever I need them. So it's maintenance. And what I do is breath exercises. I really like to use my breath. Visualizations. I do like pressure points. So, for example, if you touch this part of your palm, which is under your thumb, and where you see this like little dump. If you press here and then you circle around, that's going to release your stress. There's also pressure points behind your neck. Um, And again, visual nervous system activations, because my vision and my hearing is impaired, my vestibular system is eventually also impaired. Vestibular system is anything that has to do with balance and locating where you are, for example, which is why every time I would get on a plane when my visual node was quite big, I would literally get sick and throw up when I was on a plane because my vestibular system was all over the place. And even now, I'm quite an active person and I like to do gymnastics. And so, for example, if I train my handstands, it's really hard for me because my vestibular system literally doesn't allow me to stay in a handstand for a very long time because my balance is a little bit off. So that's something that I have to do now a little bit more because, well, for fitness purposes, really, but also because eventually, as you get old, you do need your balance quite a lot. And these are things like, they're really weird. I find them really funny, but it's stuff like looking at your thumb and then doing like this, or like moving your thumbs up and down and following it around, or standing and kind of oscillating forward and back with your feet. Um, so yeah, that's what I've been doing. And also eating healthy. Eating is, I do feel it a lot if I don't eat like I should. And with healthy, I mean any diet that works for you. Like I know what to eat in order for my body to be healthy. For you, it might be something else. Um, yeah, to answer your question.
It does answer my
Okay.
question. Um, I have a question, and more looking at the emotional toll of
Mm.
things. Has has VSS impacted your emotional well-being or self-esteem? And if so, how has it?
Mm. That's a good question. When it just onset for me, I was just so sad. Because it really shows how vulnerable you are really as a human being. Because we all think we're so strong and we're how do you say oh, what's the word? Oh, I can't remember the word, but anyway, we all think we're so like invincible in a way, and nothing's bad's gonna happen to us. And then that happens, and from one day to another, your life is changed. You have to be dealing with something completely different. So that does a lot in for your mental state. Um, I did feel doomed. I felt like nobody was understanding me. I would like cry myself to sleep like so many times. And because of my anxiety, I felt exposed and I felt so fragile because like my anxiety, like I said, was off the charts. So if I would do something that was outside of what was comfortable for me at the time, I would get a massive panic attack. And that you just feel so fragile when you have to live your life um, in such a strict way for you to not go off the rails. And also my self-esteem obviously was ruined, but that didn't really change because my self-esteem was pretty much very low even before I developed visual nose syndrome anyway. But eventually, understanding, getting over that fear, getting over like being able to manage a chronic disease gives you so much empowerment in a way, because and it takes a lot of work. You need to understand what works for you, what doesn't. You need to in a way change perspective a little bit and see it in a different way, because sometimes you think if you have anxiety or if you have visual syndrome, you think that's going to affect your life forever, but actually you can work with it and understand, okay, how can we build a good quality of life together, and taking charge of that and your life and believing that there is going to be something better for you out there. And even if you have a label, you're going to be able to find something much better out there, and believing that you can do it on your own gives you so much confidence in the long term. So I do feel very confident now, and what I've learned during that time, I take it with me always. Like for example, I was jobless last year, very bad financial situations, yet I believed that I could go through over it together with myself. Or I found this job for 6 weeks, very, very well paid, but I just didn't like it. And I left the job, and my partner, my friends were like, "Are you crazy? Like leaving a job just like that?" And I told them, I believe that I can find something very good for myself. Um, So yeah, it does come with a very big low, but eventually if you work with yourself and take charge of your life, you come out with it with so much confidence. And it does still affect me sometimes. If I really think about it, it sucks that I'm seeing this way and that I have this condition that I have to do maybe like extra work. But also, what can you do? I don't want to undermine anyone's chronic conditions because some are worse, some are better, depending on your lifestyle, depending on the way you take it. But everyone goes, everyone has something in their life, and really, what you can do is take control of it and make the best out of it. And yeah, so that's kind of what has done with my confidence. I think it did really help me to go through that period of time, and in some way, I'm also kind of glad that happened to me because I think all the changes I'm doing now, people do much later, whereas I can build a better life for myself at 25. So it got me to grow up much quicker. So I'm ranting a lot.
Oh,
Uh, yeah, so that's my experience. I feel like I was going to say something else, but I don't remember. Anyway.
you remember?
No, I can't remember it. It's okay.
How did you first discover online communities or support groups for individuals with VSS? And what was that experience like?
Yeah, I think with the Visuals No Initiative website that I was talking about before, that's some Facebook communities. So I joined those, and they were really helpful at first because, first of all, you talk to people who understand what you're going through. They might be giving you insights of what's worked, what didn't work. And that worked for a while. However, um, what really devastated me about those communities was the negative feeling around this condition. People feeling like their life was over, undefeated. There was no good perspective around it. Every time you would tell them something positive, for example, this really helped me, they would like shadow you. So there was a lot of negative views around the condition, which I get because I was very negative about it for a while, and that's very normal. When your life changes, you have to mourn. But I am a very positive person, and like I said before, eventually you need to take control of a disease. I'll bet it might be very, very bad, but there is going to be something that you can do to build that good quality of life that you want. So that's why I had to get out of those communities after a while because I had to restructure my thinking pattern to a more positive one. Otherwise, my life would have changed. And eventually, like when I left, I did come back and I would do some stress informed yoga classes for them, and we did end up creating like a really nice community where yes, we did have this condition, but we would also maybe like joke about it or be more positive of sharing things that worked and what didn't, and that was just really, really lovely to be in a community where people understood each other. So yeah, some communities are a bit like low, some communities I think you need that right balance between okay, this is a serious condition, but also okay, there is something that we can do to make it better.
I think that a lot of people like they're grieving still their like diagnosis and then getting into terms. But I feel like when you go into support groups, you need to also, like you said, I need to have that balance between okay, this is really really shit, but what are we gonna do moving forward? And I feel like that's very difficult for people to comprehend. Um, but I'm glad you found a group that worked for you in the end. For you, how important has it been, finding a community of others who understand what you're going through with VSS?
It was important because I didn't feel like I was the only one. And also when you're trying to get diagnosed, I did feel like I was gonna die eventually. That I thought my life was over because I didn't know what it was. It could have been something really bad because obviously they would check me for strokes and brain cancers, and it would be something very small that eventually would go away. So in a way, hearing that people have had that for 10, 15 years gave me a peace of mind in a sense that, okay, they did live that long with this condition and they're fine. So it did give me hope. Some people also said that it went away for them after a while. So that also gave me hope in the sense that maybe if you do really take care of yourself, maybe eventually it's going to go away. I did let go of that hope because I feel like it was giving me a goal, and I went way too strict with myself to make it go away, and it became a little bit of an obsessive thought. So I'm living my life with the thinking of, this is never gonna go away. This is gonna stay with me forever. So yeah, I don't get too how can I say, too strict about I live my life to make it go away eventually, because it might not. So yeah, it was really important. It gave me a lot of hope, and it gave me a lot of peace of mind. And also seeing the Visual Noise Initiative making videos about it, trying to help people and actively doing research on it, gave me a lot of hope as well, because there are things that you can do. There are cures that are kind of coming up. They're still like in the research process. They're very expensive still, but something is coming.
There has been quite a bit of few negatives of, groups, the support groups. But what have you learnt anything from interacting with others who have VSS that has helped you on your own journey?
Yeah. There was this one person actually who did help me a lot, and it gave me a lot of more understanding on our mindset, and eventually got me into being a neuro coach and mindset coach, which was very much about perspective and the way your brain works. When you have a condition, you're so stuck into feeling what's happening, and for me it was seeing, hearing what is going on and all the negative things, and you get stuck in this thinking pattern of constantly thinking about it and constantly worrying about it. And one thing is going to lead to another thought, and then another thought, and then eventually you get into a panic attack, and you get so stuck in this loop because that's what your brain is used to eventually. And what he told me was, because also if you have visual nerve, something that I found really interesting is that your eyes get really dry because you're so overstimulated by stuff that you literally just always look at something, so you don't blink as much.
Mm.
Um, and what happens, for example, I would with this like palinopsia thing where I would look at an object and then it would keep going. I would do that all the time just to kind of see if it was still there, and obviously it was. And this person said the more you do it, the more you're training your brain to see a certain thing and notice a certain thing. Stop doing it. And slowly I stopped obsessing over things like playing around with the vicious no, or stopped looking at whether it got worse or better, stopped like managing my symptoms, and I just started living my life. And every time I would like catch myself in a certain thinking pattern, think about it negatively, I would turn it around into something positive. And that advice really gave me so much perspective on how much control I have. Because it's really
Mm.
about, you create your own reality, and your brain does follow you. So you need to fight a little bit with your brain to what you notice and what you don't. And I'm not saying being completely don't acknowledge whatever is happening, but um, just change your reality in a way that's a little bit more positive, less obsessive about what you're experiencing. So that what came from that community that really stuck with me. And it was someone who has lived with this visual snow for 20 years, and he was completely fine with it. And that made me also completely fine with having it in a way.
So you talked about therapy, you talked about coping skills. What role has therapy played in your mental health journey, particularly managing the emotional toll of VSS?
It's been an incredible, incredible tool. I don't think I would have done it without actual help. And let me say, it did not help with my visual snow symptoms. There's nothing to do with visual snow symptoms, but it just helps you manage them so much better. And eventually, because it's a nervous system condition, the more you take care about your mental health, the more you take care about your health in general, it will get better. You might have less flare-ups, or just like me, your symptoms might start to lower tremendously. Um, what really happened about therapy, just like I said before, I went into therapy with intention, telling them I have so much anxiety, I dissociate constantly, I need techniques to keep my anxiety at bay. And after you also start to understand, okay, how can I actually cope with this? And they can give you techniques and just ways to understand what you can do with your brain, with your mindset to actually cope better with visual no. If you have visual no, something that I would really look into is, first of all, those acupuncture techniques that are very, very helpful. CBT therapy is exactly what I did. It could be breathing, any technique that helps with managing your stress at the moment. Also, something that's helped me is whenever I would get into thinking patterns that I know were going to lead me to a panic attack, finding ways to shift this thinking pattern, because your brain works on associations and works on repetition eventually. So the more you have a thinking pattern, the more you're going to repeat that certain level of thinking. So, for example, in my head, what was going on is I'm about to go outside. The lights are going to be really bright. I'm not going to be able to cope it. I'm going to have a panic attack. I'm going to die on the street. That's what was going on in my brain. But I was able to train myself to stop that thinking pattern into I'm about to go outside, the lights are going to be bright. But that's okay because I've been outside before, the lights were bright, and I was okay. I was safe. Um, Words of affirmation, as cheesy as it sounds, they really help because the more you tell your brain something, the more it's going to believe it. Like your brain has no idea about what is real and what is not. No idea. So if you have an imagination, your brain is going to think that an imagination is true. If you tell yourself that you're doomed and that your life is ruined, your brain is going to believe that and it's going to highlight reasons in your life to prove that you're right because your brain essentially is trying to protect you. So if you tell your brain and yourself that you are safe, you're in control, your brain is going to believe that. You're actually going to believe that you're in control and your brain is going to find things outside of yourself to prove that indeed you are in control. It's going to give you ideas to make you in control. And I found literally telling myself that I am safe, that I'm in control, a really, really powerful tool. So really suggest therapy because it helps you find ways to cope with this because what worked for me might not work for you because we're all beautifully unique. Yeah, so that's how therapy really helped me. Um, Yeah, and also just somatic therapy if that's what you're into, just like releasing stuff from your body. Also, what I've done was acupuncture, and I went to an Ayurveda doctor as well. Acupuncture helped me release the stress that I had in my body. I remember doing acupuncture and having feeling these energies going up to my head, and I kept telling the doctor, I feel like there is something that needs to be released from my head, and it's not going away. And also, I have to say going towards the more Eastern medicine side, you're gonna get much less backlash. Like when I would go to a doctor and tell my symptoms, I would be looked at like if I was lying. Whereas I went to the other acupuncture appointment, I told them exactly what I was feeling, and they're like, "Oh, okay, cool. Well, let's see what we can do about them." No judgment. They just absolutely believed me, and they just did what they could. Same for the Ayurveda doctor. Tell me if I'm mispronouncing it. Um, I went in there and I said, "This is what I'm experiencing." She's like, "Okay, this is what it might be. Let's do something about it. Some massages, some breathing techniques, whatever it was." They didn't make my visuals no better, but they helped so much with my stress, so much with my understanding my quality of life that it gave me so much more control to actually think, okay, what works, what doesn't, and then eventually my visuals got better because of those tools, I like to call them, and to manage how I would react basically to my symptoms.
How have you found the support in terms of mental health resources? And what do you think is missing from available services for individuals with VSS? And in what way um, has that support helped you educate those around you, especially friends or family, about the mental health challenges that come with VSS?
So in terms of resources that I found, particularly for VSS, and it's something that I've found just in general, they would tell you manage your stress, manage your anxiety, eat healthy, do this. Just very standardized advice when things like this, when you're dealing with stress, dissociation, with having to rebuild your routine, really, your structure, what you do, really taking care of yourself, that is very personalized. And that is why I wanted to create that community 6 pillars, because I wanted people to find their own way of getting better. Like I said, what works for me might not necessarily work for you. So putting resources out there to make people understand that they need to find their own ways, because what happens most of the time is they tell you do mindfulness, for 1 hour and do mindfulness, or first of all, what is mindfulness? Or they tell you eat veggies and whatever it is, and that's all fine, but first of all, people don't have 1 hour to do mindfulness and do exercises. I don't know, vegan diet might work for me, it might not work for you. So all these things. So give resources out there, but also make people understand this is a trial and error game. Sitting down for 1 hour and doing mindfulness might help you. It might not help you. Like doing mindfulness, for example, sitting down, meditating, has helped me a lot when I was trying to get better. Now, sitting down for 30 minutes meditating doesn't help me. I do different types of meditations. I do movement. Movement for me, it's meditation, because I'm there really, listening to my body. Doing yoga nidra is meditation for me, or taking a walk. That is my sort of meditation. So find ways that'll keep you structured, and also just schedule the time in your calendar. Like if you know that mindfulness is really good for you, schedule 15 minutes so you know that you're actually going to do that. So yeah, to answer your question, that is what it's lacking. I think making people understand that we're all unique and you need to find your own ways, because what happens is people try it for 1 week, they see that it doesn't work, and then they just leave it off, when actually it's just about consistency and also finding what works for you ultimately.
My last question regarding mental health is how can mental health professionals better support individuals with chronic conditions like VSS?
Mm.
And what role can they play in holistic care?
Yeah, I think it's understanding what the person is really feeling, because chronic conditions can be impairing in many different ways. Physically, for me, was very much a mental state that didn't allow me to have a good quality of life. And there's also fears associated with that. For me, it was the fear of ending up with a really bad condition and dying very young. Or for others, it might be fear of not being able to take care of your child, for example, or not being there for your job, and whatever it might be. So really understanding what fears come with this as well, and help the person understand that they can actually be in control of this condition and get rid of those fears, because you're going to have more obstacles along the way, but you can ultimately achieve whatever you want, or find some sort of lifestyle that accommodates you without feeling like you're missing out on something. Yeah, and just being understanding, just giving techniques and practices, really believing on what the person is saying, because even if you can't see something, whatever the person is saying should ultimately be true. Which, I mean, I hope mental health professionals are already doing that, because that's kind of their job. But I'm not a mental health professional myself, so I don't really know, but that's kind of the support that I found from my own mental health professional. So I hope that others are also doing that.
What sparked your decision to become an advocate for VSS awareness? Was there a specific event that inspired you to take action?
Yeah, well, it was when I started to get better and actually see for myself that, oh, I we've got this. Like, you can actually be in control. And it's really hard, but you can actually, there's so much out there. And that's what inspired me to speak loudly about this, because I do believe that I am a high achieving woman. And if I can do this with visual no, you can also do it. Like anyone can do it. You just need to build on that belief system. And also, this visual no syndrome is really, it's really, I can correlate in so many situations outside of visual no, which is why I do this work on confidence right now, because I see so many people, especially women, getting stuck in situations where perhaps they don't get along with their families, but they're still living at home because it feels like home. They're in a job because they're scared that they're not going to find something else, so they stay in this like in this really bad job that's actually just ruining their mental health and just not giving them a good quality of life. Or they stay in relationships with people just because they also feel like home and they feel comfortable. And what I see in all these people is this lack of belief that they can actually do something, is the lack of belief that they can get out of situations and be completely fine so that they can find something else. And so that's why I do advocate for visual no, but ultimately I advocate for anyone who's stuck in a very uncomfortable situation, doesn't know how to get out. And what I advocate for is work on your belief system, because you can get the tools and the ways to do something. I don't know if you have visual no, learn how to take care of your stress, your dissociation, whatever visual no is giving you, the way you eat, your movement. And with those tools, then build a belief system that you can actually get those tools to get out of the situation, and believe that there is something out there that is so much better for you. And which is why I just really want to help people to see that, because sometimes I just want to shake people up and be like, you don't know what is coming at you. Something is great is coming at you. But again, you need to change your environment. You need to change your mindset, because if nothing changes, nothing changes. um, so yeah, I don't know, I just see potential in everyone. I just want people to grab that potential, because you can really do it. It's hard. You're gonna have obstacles. I'm not saying that it's not, but you can really do it. It's about changing the mindset, finding that belief, and just going for it. Yeah.
Can you share a moment where you felt the true power of your advocacy work on somebody else's life?
There was this guy, I'm not gonna say his name just in case. And it was when I was doing this stress relieved yoga for vicious no syndrome. And it would come every single day and he would tell me, Giulia, how do you do this? And it was so empowering, because he was on the other side of the world. He's from Chile. I'm in London. And I was like, Giulia, how do you do this? I can't leave my house. I'm saying this and I'm doing this. How can you live your life? Because also it was follow me on Instagram, and he would see that I was going to my job and I was doing the yoga, and I got back into movement and all this stuff, going out with friends. And I told him exactly what I've been saying now. It's, you are here, you're alive, you are moving right now. If you're moving right now, you can move tomorrow when you're outside of your house. You've done this. It's about remembering you've done this many times, you're going to be fine. And the more we would do yoga, the more I learned about building that body awareness. Something that's also changed my life is actually feeling my body and realizing that the body is mine, which sounds really weird, but so many people are so out of touch, especially if you have stress and if you have dissociation, you feel so out of touch with your body. So just sitting down for 1 minute and listen to your breath, and you're gonna get the realization that this body is mine. I am alive, I am a person, and I am actually in charge of whatever is going on. I am in charge of the way I want to see my reality, the way I want to live my life. And eventually, the more we would meet, the more we would do the yoga, the more we would be in the community. You really saw the shift in this person actually getting out there. He found a job. He was going out with his friends a little bit more, and that was just so nice to see. And I think eventually you just need a role model. So if you are in those visual no groups, that's great, but do find that person in those groups that is actually actively working on getting better, because it is fine to complain, it is fine to cry about not having a cure, but eventually you do need to get on with your life, because again, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So yeah, that it was just beautiful to see the change in that person and how they their band eventually got back into their lives.
Is there any challenges that you face while trying to raise like awareness of VSS, especially in a world where it's not widely recognized?
Yeah, it's probably being taken seriously, because when you say you have visual snow, people are like, oh, okay. And I think it happens with any condition really, because if we're all a little bit selfish, like if something doesn't affect you directly, it's really hard to actually care about something, right? So that was definitely the backlash that I got. And also, again, there's even from people with visual snow, because there is so much negativity. When someone actually gets better, some people do believe in you and they're like, how did you do this? Can you, I want to be that. I know I can do it. But some people just tell you that is not true. I bet you don't even have visuals now. That can be possible. And that's what I found the hardest, is like seeing these people with visuals now attacking someone who actually built a life, even if they had visuals now. And that was really hard to see, just because I wanted them to get out of that mindset and actually do something with their lives, because I do understand how hard it is and it's not easy, but again, eventually you gotta you gotta do something about it. So yeah, it was definitely just getting people to care ultimately. uh, and also there's this weird something I want to say to people who just know, just pay attention to scammers, because there are going to be people, especially on YouTube, they are making videos about getting rid of the visuals no, and then they sell you these courses and these things that cost so much money. Just pay attention to those people, because if the visuals noise initiative tells that there is no cure, there is no cure. You can take care of yourself, taking care of your nervous system. That doesn't mean that it's going to go away. Please do that, but don't pay thousands of pounds for something that might not work. Um, yeah, so yeah, there was a lot to navigate into being advocate, not being associated with those people, getting people to, in a way, believe you. So yeah, and it's also yeah, when because people see a person and they see them doing all these things, you would never question that they have a chronic condition. So when I tell people, they're like, oh really, you have like all this stuff, but then because you show that you're still living your life, they don't really believe it. And that's the same with my family. I would tell them, because my family is in Italy, so they haven't really seen how bad I was feeling, but I would tell them I feel bad because this is happening to me, but because I'm not the person that just cries on myself so much. I'm an action oriented person, so they would see that I was taking action, and because I was doing that, they wouldn't believe how in pain I was, just because I was actively doing things. But that doesn't mean that there's no pain or there's no sufferance necessarily just because you're doing things. So that was quite hard. Yeah.
I can relate to that being from an Asian family. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, there's that, yeah. Because I'm up and about doesn't mean I'm not ill, you know.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
not in pain, I'm not suffering. I'm not gonna be screaming from from the rooftops, every
Mm.
time I'm in pain. It's like, yeah. And it must be really difficult to actually deal with that because you're like, these are the people that are supposed to support me, and
Yeah.
I don't have that system, and
Yeah.
that's really, really vulnerable as well.
Yeah. It was really, really hard. Yeah, and it's also hard because sometimes, I don't know, for example, one of my family members, she has problem with her back. Um, and she's, some people get into the victim mindset, some people like us, they still live their lives. And she got very in touch with her victim mindset of, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. And I don't know, she gets a cold and everyone is like, oh my God, you got a cold, are you okay? And nobody ever did that for me, which is why also, getting in this community is really helpful. Yeah, so it's really hard not to be believed in a way, not being taken seriously. Um, yeah.
I'm so sorry. It must be really difficult. I don't know what to say, but it's just, yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
We're going to. I have 7 scenarios, but I know we're not going to have time to go to 7 scenarios. So you can pick a number between 1 to 7 and we'll discuss
Okay.
them. Okay, so for our audience, people around I think I said 248 people have written in, people with VSS all over the world. There was
Wow.
even somebody from Australia. So, this post has gone out and people have, got in touch to ask for some advice.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, you can pick a scenario 1 to 7. What number would you like?
Oh, let's do with 6.
So, dear Julia, I've always been a social person, but visual snow has made me withdraw from so many activities I used to enjoy. At parties or dinners, the lights are too bright and it's hard to focus on people's faces. Even talking to someone one to one is exhausting, so I feel like my eyes are working overtime to keep up. I've started making excuses to stay at home. I'm scared that people stop inviting me altogether. Don't want to lose my friends or become isolated, but I don't know how to explain what I'm going through or how to cope. How can I get my social life back on track without pushing myself too far from fading into the background?
Oh, I'm so glad I chose this one. I totally relate. Totally. Like this thing of like not being able to see people's faces, like such a struggle. Such a struggle. Um, yeah, and also I remember someone gave me an advice of I just like stare at something, but when you stare, things start to like blend in, so you can't really stare. But so a few things to unpack here. Um, First of all, you can still be social without going out all the time. You just need to take that energy and put it into specific events. Um, for example, what I do, I love to go out, I love to go raving. So if someone tells me, let's go dance or let's go to a gig, I see exactly who's going to be there and I'm gonna check who is playing, for example, because I want to make sure that me going out is going to be worth it. So if there is a DJ that I like, a band that I like, then I'll go. If if it's just going to a random bar listening to R&B music all day, all night long, I'm like, I'm gonna pass. So do spread the energy of being sociable into something that you really care about. The second thing is this fear of people forgetting you or losing friends. That is a very real fear, and it's basically what we call FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. If our bodies are very primitive and we still live in a way out like if we were in the jungle, like being chased by a bear. And back in the days, you had to be in a team, you had to be with other people because you being left out meant you had higher chances of dying, right? Because you didn't have protection. So that's what happens now. Fear of missing out is not really fear of missing out, it's fear of being abandoned, fear of being forgotten, essentially. So you need to remind yourself that that fear is very real, but real friends are going to accept your boundaries. If you have someone who tells you, "Oh, you're not going out with us, you're so boring," they're not your friends. They're just someone that you go out with and hanging out because you're gonna be left out with just maybe a few friends, but those friends are gonna give you so much more joy than the other ones that don't really believe in you. Now, when I tell my friend, like I said before, I'm the most boring person ever. Like when I tell my friends I'm not going out or I am coming, but I'm probably gonna stay for 1 hour and then leave. I'm not gonna drink. They don't judge me. They say, it's Julia. Actually, they might actually respect you much, much more because they're like, oh, she actually understands what she wants. And you being there is going to mean so much more for them because you are there because you enjoy them. You're not just there because you want a fun night out. And same for drinking. I quit drinking, but like I said before, sometimes I do have a drink and I really weigh down like the options. Sometimes, for example, I don't know, my friend is having an hand, she's getting married. I'm super happy for her. Um, I'm gonna be drinking then, obviously to my limits, but it's because I'm gonna be with friends that I love. It's gonna be a fun night. It's gonna be margaritas that I love. That is worth me being a little bit the next day. Some other things are not. So really, yeah, it's about understanding what your priorities are, where to put your energy, and that doesn't mean that you're less sociable. You're just directing your energies into one specific evening or one specific event rather than all the time.
I think that's beautiful advice.
Thank you. Yeah, it really helped me a lot.
Hell, it felt really, really genuine, which was amazing. Dear Julia, I spent countless hours researching visual snow syndrome. I read every article, joined every support group, and tried every suggested remedy, but nothing seems to help. The worst part is knowing there's no cure and no definite explanation for why this happens. It feels like I'm stuck with this condition forever and I'm losing hope. I used to be such a positive person, but now I feel weighed down by this unsolvable mystery. How can I stay optimistic and keep moving forward, but there's no clear path to recovery from Hope and Hold?
Yeah. My answer is gonna hurt, and there might not be recovery, and that's fine. I know I've been through the same loop of, oh, this is going to be my life. What is gonna happen? And the more I had the goal of getting rid of it, the more I would get so tangled into the nitty gritty of what I can do that I wasn't living my life. And the more I would think of getting rid of it, the more it was actually, I was scared of it. Because when your goal is to get rid of this condition, you're just focusing on what you can do. You're just noticing what is getting better, what is getting worse. Like I literally remember having a journal and writing down all the symptoms and scoring them every day. And that literally puts you in this framework of having to focus on your symptoms all the time and you're not getting out of it. Work on your acceptance that this might be with you forever, and work on what can you do to get that good quality of life. You said you used to be a really positive person. You still are. I believe you still are. You just need to find a way to manage this. Remember, you are in control. You can do things to make your life better. If that is setting boundaries, do that. If that is changing your thinking patterns into not focusing so much on your symptoms, but actually on what you do on your daily basis, do that. Uh, it's also not just about adapting the little things. For example, looking at a screen for me was really hard. Hey, I bought glasses to look at my screen. That kind of helped. If the dark bothers you because you see all those things, have some lights on. Or the other way, if you have light sensitivity, you have like lighter lights in the house. If you want to go out raving, wear sunglasses. Everyone like wears like glasses when they rave. Um, so find small things that can make the symptoms more adaptable and live your life. Trust me, the less you think about your symptoms, the less you're gonna see them. And the more they're gonna become your normality. When something becomes your normality, you don't even look at them anymore. My symptoms have lowered over the years. And now, like for example, if I look at the wall right now, I do see the flickering dots, but I really have to focus. If I'm talking, it's not that I'm noticing them that much. Um, and I know this doesn't seem like very tangible advice. I wish I could give you something much better, but ultimately it's about your mindset. It's about how you see this condition, and don't let the condition um, dictate how you live your life. Actually, work with it to build a better life, and be positive that something you can feel so much better. Just be positive with that because it is possible. Um, yeah.
Dear Julia, I've had visual snow syndrome for years, but explaining it to others feels impossible. When I tell my friends or family about the static I see or the ways light seem to glare and distort, they either dismiss it as stress or laugh it off as eye tricks. I feel so alone in this, and I'm afraid they'll never understand what I'm going through. I've even stopped talking about it because I'm tired of being ignored or ridiculed. How do I help the people in my life understand that this is real and deeply affecting me? From Unseen and Unheard.
Mm. Um, Send them this podcast if they want to hear it. Send them YouTube videos, articles. That's something that I wish I had done, to be honest. But I mean, my family doesn't speak English, so it was just really hard to send them stuff anyway. Um, Send them things that are gonna evaluate what you're feeling, and ultimately, they might never understand, and they might keep doing this. And also, I don't know your family, I don't know your loved ones, but I feel like sometimes people that really love you have this coping mechanism of undermining what you're feeling so that they also feel better. And that's how I like to think about it with my family and my mom, for example. Like having a child who's not doing well is just really hurtful. So I feel like sometimes making it seem like it's nothing much, it's a way to protect themselves necessarily. But also, I don't know. Having validation is really important, and when we don't have validation, it hurts. But the most important validation that you can have is your own validation. What I would say is work on your confidence, work on your belief system. Again, like, you know what you're going through, and acknowledge it for yourself. If you tell someone, I'm not going out today because my symptoms are flaring up, and they say, I don't understand that, whatever. Like, you need to be fine with people being like, oh, that doesn't seem real. Um, there's this book called The Courage of Being Disliked. It's really, really good. And I mean, it's about being disliked in different ways, but I think it does apply in this sense, in the terms of, if you believe what you're feeling is true, you might want validation, but also receiving that validation is not going to affect how you react to things. So spending your life trying to make other people understand, I don't think it's going to be worth it, because they might never understand. But what you can spend that energy on is focusing on, like, your own life, building the life that you want, because eventually you're going to find people that understand that life and are going to want to live that life with you. Yeah, I don't know if that was really helpful, but that's how I see it.
It is helpful. It's absolutely helpful. I think it's very important for people to get that strength to navigate through something as difficult as this, because the support system is so important. Before we conclude, what are your hopes for the future of research and awareness regarding visual snow syndrome?
I would love for people to talk more about it. I would actually love for people with a platform, if they have it, to speak about it. There's no role models for people with visual snow. Like, there might be famous people out there who have visual snow and we don't know. And it would be so fantastic to see someone famous or someone with a platform talking about it and showing people that you can have visual snow and still be successful. I would love that. In terms of research, there are things that are moving, and I do believe something will be out there. So I do hope that perhaps this gets in the UK and we can give it a try. I hope that also the prices are going to lower for those treatments, because I've been having a look and they're quite expensive, and there's also the possibility that they might not work. Yeah, and I hope, if more people are going to talk about this, more money eventually is going to go into research, and we can actually, first of all, understand where it comes from, because we don't really know. And I really think that if you understand where something comes from, ultimately you can reverse it somehow, because you know what to treat. Yeah, that's what I hope. Just more research, more awareness. Yeah, I also like a more positive outlook to this, because, like I said, if you go into communities, you just get doomed. So just more people showing that you got this. You got this.
What inspired you to pursue this topic and share it with our listeners?
Well, I think it falls into, like, the previous question a little bit. If more people see other people talking about this, then it gets normalized. Then you also feel like, if she's fine and dealing with this, I can be fine and dealing with this too. And eventually, the more people won't have to go through what we've been through to understand what visual snow is, and then find support, because that was the hardest part. So the more we talk about this, the more we share it, the less people are going to have to struggle to find out what's going on in their life and have to go through MRIs and think they're having strokes for months. Yeah.
Looking back on our conversation, what's the most important takeaway or message you want our audience to remember?
Yeah. I might be biased, but do work on that belief system that you can have the quality of life that you deserve. You have all the strengths you need to build on that confidence and to eventually get to the other side. And it's gonna be hard. It's gonna suck. That's when you need that support system. Find a support system, because it's gonna get hard, but you're gonna get out the other way feeling a completely different person. Do believe that you can control of this. You can control whatever is happening. You might not be controlling the symptoms, but you're definitely going to be able to control how you feel about the symptoms and how much that's going to affect your day. And you're going to have lows, you're going to have ups, it's going to be a roller coaster, it's going to be crazy, but eventually you get to that balance point that you need. It's kind of like, a pendulum. Like when you try to find that balance, yeah, the pendulum goes like to the side, until eventually it's gonna find that balance right in the middle. And it's gonna take time. Sometimes it's gonna swing a little bit this way, sometimes it's gonna swing a little bit that way, but eventually it's gonna find that calm and you're gonna feel great. So you're not doomed. I promise you, you're not doomed.
Is there anything else you'd like to add or any final thoughts you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, I just want to share positive vibes and hopes. And I want to tell you, honestly, visuals now, it's a superpower. Like, not many people are able to see what's going on in their bodies. Like, the more you actually use visuals now as a tool to understand how you're feeling, the more you can interact with it and play around. Like, if I'm stressed and I flare up, I know exactly that, okay, I need to do breathing exercises, for example, to calm myself down. If it's flaring up and then I look at my period app and it says that I'm about to menstruate, I'm like, I'm in my neutral phase. That's cool. If you menstruate, obviously. So yeah, I don't know, just play around with it. See, that's a superpower in a way. I know it's hard, it sucks, but so it can be a superpower sometimes.
And where can our listeners find you or connect with you to stay up to date on your work?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn only for now at Giulia Sale, spelled Giuliasale. Feel free to message me. Very much approachable if you need any help and support. I will have a website coming soon, so stay tuned. Yeah.
Perfect. Finally, what is one thing that you're grateful for today?
Uh, hmm. Well, I'm grateful for giving me the space and the platform to share my experience. I've never really talked about my visuals now in this extensive way. So thank you so much. You're definitely giving all these 200 and something people some hope with this. So I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you so much for coming onto this podcast, and I'm extremely grateful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Honestly. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this powerful episode. We hope Julia's journey with visual snow syndrome has shed light on the challenges and resilience that comes with living through the unseen battle of chronic conditions. Her story reminds us of the importance of community, self-advocacy, and the courage it takes to embrace every part of our unique journeys, even the ones that we never planned for. If you or someone you know is navigating a similar path, remember you're not alone. The communities, resources, and voices like Julia's out there, standing as proof that strength and vulnerability can coexist beautifully. Sharing our stories, raising awareness, and supporting each other is how we turn challenges into movements and struggles into strength. Don't forget to check the episode notes for resources and ways to connect with Julia, as well as links to visual snow syndrome communities. Together, we can make a difference one story at a time. Thank you again for tuning in. Remember to carry forward the strength you gained here today. Stay iconic. Until next time.